Am I the a-hole for not telling my parents that the event they were missing was my wedding? Buckle up, guys. This will be kinda long. So I, 27 female, have a younger brother, Mike, 21 male. He is the definition of a man-child and a mama's boy. Always complaining, always expecting others to bow to him, just overall an a-hole. Ever since he was born, my parents fussed over him for everything. He's not special needs or had a traumatic birth or anything of the sort. He was just born, and my parents completely discarded me. My mom, 50 female especially. She went from a loving mother to one of those boy moms that people make fun of on the internet. My father, 50 male, still showed me love and support, but has always been too much of a coward to stand up to my mother and let me win at least once. The only one who stood up for me was my grandpa, 76 male, who always called my parents out on their BS and never liked my brother. I remind him of his late wife, my grandma, and we have a very special bond. But he lives on the other side of the country and I could never see him often. Mike knows how our mom prefers him and loves to shove it in my face. Because of this and his behavior, we've always been at odds. He's spoiled, a brat and an awful human. I can't remember how many times I ended up in trouble for things I did better than him or for things he framed me with. His only talent are his football skills. He won a scholarship to a nice college out of state. My parents didn't spend a dime on my education because apparently my fund had been used to cover expenses after a fire, just for me to discover years later that said money were given to Mike to buy a car and a house. It's at public university that I met Lucas. He was the first person I was really drawn to there. Of course, I met new people who are now my dearest friends, and thanks to them and Lucas, who was my best friend for years before we got together, I managed to move out of my parents' house. Now both Lucas and I are well known in our fields and have very good salaries. Now to the main issue. Lucas proposed to me a year ago. We're very private people, so we didn't post it on social media or anything, and when I told my parents, they dismissed it with "that's nice." I'm starting to think they downright didn't listen to me at all. We decided that we wanted a nice but simple ceremony and reception with our friends and relatives. Lucas convinced me to invite my parents and brother, but they never responded to the invite. And whenever I went to visit and began to talk about my wedding, without mentioning it was a wedding, my mom would always speak over me and my brother's accomplishments and wild adventures. At one point, I got fed up with it and interrupted my mom to tell her that there was an event I was planning to organize, whose date was unmovable. She told me that they couldn't attend because my brother was playing the last game of the season that very same day and wanted them to be there. This favoritism didn't surprise me. They missed my ballets, shows, and both my high school and university graduation for things about him. At this point, I wanted to be petty. I told both my parents that it wasn't a problem to miss this event, purposely omitted the fact that this event was my wedding, and didn't insist further. Flash forward to a few weeks ago, I got married. It was perfect. My family, Lucas's family, and our friends were all there, and we had a blast. My grandpa was happy to give me away, and it was just perfect. My relatives asked me multiple times why my parents weren't there with us. I was honest, and simply said that they had my brother's game to attend and couldn't come. They gave me a few looks, and my grandpa was visibly angry for a while, but otherwise nothing strange happened. After the reception, Lucas and I left for our honeymoon and were phone-free for the whole duration of the trip. But once we got back, we discovered that a crap storm was welcoming us home. I turned my phone on and was unable to even unlock it before a storm of notifications popped up. Most of them were from my mother and brother. Mike called me all sorts of nasty names and insulted me because apparently one of my paternal aunts posted the photos of the wedding on Facebook and captioned it with a very obvious dig at my parents, especially my mom, for missing the wedding. The post apparently went viral in my parents' community, and they've been publicly shamed for their mistreatment of me. It also turns out that my grandpa personally visited my parents to go on a tirade to shame my father, his son, to the point of tears. And this seemed to be my father's breaking point, because he was so distraught for missing his only daughter's wedding and for his father's disapproval that he finally rebelled against my mom and is threatening divorce, unless she makes it up to me. I think that's the reason why my mom has been spamming my phone with messages, at first insulting and threatening and then downright pitiful, full of begging and pity parties. Now, I'm at home with my husband deciding how to approach the situation. Most of my relatives, even those I didn't invite to the wedding, reached out to apologize for what I went through and to claim they had no idea this was happening at home. Can't blame any of my relatives. They all live with my grandpa on the other side of the country or in another state. But my mom's sisters and friends are belittling me for not telling my mom about the wedding. Because now she's inconsolable at the thought of having missed my wedding. Personally, I think she just claims that to save face, but I'm not sure. The latest messages from my father and mother seem extremely saddened and hurt for missing my wedding. Now my family's divided on 3 fronts. The majority who is sticking by my side, my maternal aunts shaming me for hurting my mom's feelings, and my maternal grandparents who are adamant that I forgive my mom in light of her atonement. My best friends are telling me not to listen to them. So Reddit, am I the a-hole? Edit. Thank you so much for the feedback and love. It's overwhelming. I'm going to address the popular questions here. 1. I did inform my parents about my wedding. I sent traditional on-paper invites to all my guests and was notified that all invites had reached their addressees. I did not receive any answer from my parents and Mike, a few very distant relatives, and some people on Lucas's side. I did reach out to all of them through message to double-check, and those who hadn't replied told me they couldn't come. I asked my parents and brother via text, but they didn't respond. I was left on read. Knowing them and given all the things I had to plan, I didn't bother insisting. 2. I didn't repeat the date of my wedding because I had already been told there was my brother's game. Plus, every time I insisted on highlighting my celebrations to get an answer, I was always told that it wasn't that important and to not be pissy and bother, because some things were simply more important than me. At this point, I think it's fair for me to not insist anymore. It's not worth the effort. 3. I didn't keep my wedding a secret. I avoided telling my parents that it was my wedding to see if they would be interested in the slightest. But surprise, surprise, they weren't. Despite this, I did openly talk about my wedding with my aunts and uncles. My mother was in the room with us a few times when I discussed venues or dress shops with my aunt, the Facebook post one. But sometimes my mom was on the phone, and other times she was just chatting with other people. She never paid attention. When I talked about it during reunions, she smiled and said, "That's great, dear," and then would change the subject. Radio silence on Dad and Mike. 4. I kept in contact with them because, well, all the times I tried to go no contact in the past years, I've been harassed. I tried after my high school bachelor's and master's graduations, to which they never bothered to show up for reasons involving my brother. Every time, I was shamed for daring to turn back on my family by my parents, my brother, my maternal aunts, and my maternal grandparents. I think the turning point here is that, all those times Lucas wasn't by my side. We started dating a little after my last attempt to go no contact, and now that I have him here, I feel more confident in my stance. But before that, I wasn't this confident. As I already stated, all my paternal side lives on the other side of the country and wasn't aware of how they treated me. I did try to expose my parents once, at 14. My aunts, uncles, and grandpa reprimanded them. They faked being sorry. And then once home, I got the beating and gaslighting of my life for lying. After that, I kept in contact regularly with my paternal side, but omitting my parents' abuse out of fear, which to be honest still haunts me to this day. Only Grandpa knew, but he was always threatened to be alienated from me if he tried anything. 5. My parents and I are not from the same city. I live in a city an hour drive from my parents' small town, and they don't know my new address because once my brother tried to break into my apartment to steal some cash, and my mother backed him up, claiming that siblings share their goods. Now I moved, and I'll be sure not to tell them where I live. 6. My parents did buy my brother a car and a house before he even started high school. They bought him a car for his 16th birthday and a house near his college when he began freshman year. They didn't spend the money of my fund right away. They just lied to me to use it later for my brother, keeping it stored for later in the meantime. Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. They were invited. They gave a reason they weren't attending. You accepted their non-participation. Right, they were sent an invitation. When I get invitations, they are hung on the refrigerator as a reminder, and I have the decency to respond. The parents deserve everything they get. Opie needs to tell the sisters the truth. The mom is spinning it to make it sound like they were shunned by their daughter. Bold of you to assume they even opened it after seeing Opie's name. Wow, I didn't think of that. It makes perfect sense. I'm going with this. Good thinking. Not the a-hole. I'd be incredibly petty and just no contact your parents and your mom's family. See how they like being ignored? Congratulations to yourself and Lucas. May you always have happiness in each other. Yes, and what atonement is the mother supposed to do? Unless she can travel back in time and attend OP's wedding and graduations, there really is no way to atone. I'd keep the whole lot no contact. They don't add anything positive to her life. I would also inform everyone about what happened to your college fund. Exactly. There's no fixing this. Some things can't be undone, and this is one of them. There's no do-over for decades of neglect as a child. I would do as said above. No contact as they add nothing positive to your life, and inform relatives about your college fund. You don't need them now, and you've never trusted them to do the right thing by you anyway, if you were in a situation where you needed support. If your parents are embarrassed, though, they shouldn't have done it. It wasn't one mistake. It was decades of choices. You've got your grandpa, and you might find your paternal aunts to step up. Now they know, and you have your husband. Not the a-hole. I cannot comprehend this. Just go no contact. Honestly, after all these years, what do you expect will happen differently? Any kids they have will also be ignored and treated like they're toe jam also. They have had years to atone, and neither of them did. Dad is no better. Even worse if he realized how wrong it was, but still quietly sat by and let it happen. Next story. Am I the a-hole for uninviting my sister from our wedding after she gave out info about it to my fiancé's bio parents? Wedding is next weekend. My fiancé purposely did not tell her biological parents that she was engaged or anything about our wedding. Her biological parents never did anything wrong per se. My fiancé just doesn't view them as her family, and the topic makes her uncomfortable. A couple years ago, her birth mother tried to reach out to me and a few other members of our family on Facebook, and one message reached my sister, who decided to stick her nose where it did belong, because she feels for my fiancé's mother. I went low contact with my sister after that. Sister was originally invited to our wedding mostly because my mom wanted it. However, we figured out last week that my sister had shared our wedding invitation and website with my fiancé's biological father. Her bio parents then bought something off the registry and sent along a note to our house. Sister's excuse is that we didn't tell her that she wasn't allowed to share that info, and that there's nothing wrong with the gift. To me, this is common freaking sense, especially since you know the reason we don't talk to you unless we have to anymore. So I said sorry, but you're no longer coming. My mom is so upset and keeps insisting I'll regret it one day. My sister is trying to say she already made a monetary investment for shoes, hair, a makeup artist appointment, a hotel by the venue, etc. In my opinion, if she cared so much, then she would have thought about her actions. My fiancé is starting to break down because my mom called her crying and I said nope. Even if you're okay with it, I'm not. Kin doesn't do kin like that. And to be clear, I said my brother-in-law is welcome to come with my nieces because I don't want them to be left out of the party all their cousins get to go. Edited to add, I guess I didn't make this clear. My fiancé was adopted when she was a few months old. Her adoptive parents are the people she considers her parents, and they're very involved with the wedding and her life. Not a-hole. I think most people commenting have missed the point that, according to OP's post, they are her bio parents, not the parents who raised her, and only reached out to her 2 years ago, hence her having no relationship with them. I'd be upset with the betrayal OP's sister showed. She knew there was no contact or relationship between them, and gave them all the info anyway. I met my biological mother and half-brother in late 2020. They aren't my family. I tried having a relationship with them. Sometimes things are not meant to be. I'd be livid at OP's sister. Be clearer to your obtuse sister. You invited people who are not invited. So now, we have to get security involved. Do you realize that my future parents-in-law are put in a weird situation because you were so uncouth, so vulgar, as to impertinently invite people to a sacred ceremony when you're not even hosting it? Who do you think you are? Your behavior is wildly inappropriate. We do not know what you'll do next, how you will next intrude and impose unwanted things in our lives, and our natural reaction is to distance ourselves from you. If she legit apologizes profusely, ease up and let her come, because maybe she is actually just clueless. If she's defensive, stand your ground, but those nieces aren't coming if she doesn't come. Luckily, we already had security because the venue requires it if you're serving liquor. But yeah, we are concerned about them trying to show up. I don't think my sister would, because it doesn't go along with her victim narrative if she makes a scene. She's definitely going to be vague posting the whole time though. Last story. Am I the a-hole for refusing to help my sister with her wedding planning because she didn't include me as a bridesmaid? I, 28 female, have a younger sister, Lucy, 25 female, who is getting married in a few months. We've always been close, so I was really surprised when she didn't ask me to be a bridesmaid. Instead, she chose her friends and left me out. When I asked her about it, she said she wanted to keep her bridal party small and only included friends who have known her fiancé for a long time. I was hurt, but tried to respect her decision. Now, Lucy is overwhelmed with wedding planning and has been asking me a lot for help, from organizing her bachelorette party to making DIY decorations. I've been helping out here and there, but recently she asked me to take on more responsibilities, which would require a lot of time and effort. I told her that while I'm happy to help out occasionally, I can't commit to doing so much, especially since she did include me as a bridesmaid. Lucy got really upset and said I'm being petty and unsupportive. Our parents were also pressuring me to help her, saying that family should come first. Am I the a-hole for refusing to help my sister with her wedding planning because she didn't include me as a bridesmaid? Now for the comments. Not a-hole. The stuff she's asking for help with is literally part of the bridal party's duties. She wanted close friends, she got close friends. Now they can demonstrate how close they are. This, because Opie was not included as a bridesmaid. She went on business as usual, and did not block out time to help as what sister is asking for is bridesmaid duties. Too bad, so sad. This is what sister wanted. It is not Opie's fault that sister has friends as crappy as she is, and they're not living up to their duties. Anyone complaining is free to help sister out. There is no requirement that a potential guest to a wedding has to jump through bridesmaids' hoops. Expect to be treated as you treat others. Sister knew this would be a snub of Opie. She cannot snub someone and then demand their time and efforts. If I were Opie, I would not sign myself up to be a ghost bridesmaid. Completely agree with everything you said. I just wanted to add, our parents are also pressuring me to help her, saying that family should come first. If family comes first, why didn't the parents say this to Lucy and pressure her into making Opie a bridesmaid? Opie, how much money do you make compared to the bridesmaid? Is it possible Lucy sees you as a free bank, which is why you're being asked to do this stuff instead of them? Family should come first, for you, but not your sister. Not a-hole. You are under zero obligation to help her. She gave roles to other people, but somehow wants the job to be done by Opie. Opie, stand firm and tell her to have her bridesmaids help her. Not a-hole. I didn't invite my parents to my wedding because they always took my sister's side even when she falsely claimed that my fiancé forced himself on her. My sister, female 28, is the golden child. She could do nothing wrong with my family. She is very beautiful and she got away with everything, even stealing 3 of my boyfriends in the past. I met my fiancé 5 years ago. I was in love with him immediately, and I think so was he. That left me reluctant to introduce him to my family, and sister in particular, because he's her type, rich and good-looking. After a year of secretly dating him, I was running out of excuses as to why I couldn't meet my family. I literally thought, screw it. If she took him, better now than when I've invested more years on this dude. She acted precisely as I expected. She was flirty from the get-go. Except this time my fiancé didn't reciprocate and ignored her. One day, my fiancé told me that he was receiving flirty texts from her and even one picture of her in a bra. I confronted her, and we had a row in Mom's kitchen. She went upstairs crying, telling me that if she really wanted him, she would have him. My mom kicked me out and told me he's more my sister's age anyway. About 3 years ago, I was out of town for work for 2 weeks, and one evening my fiancé started a video call on his iPad to show me how he was taking care of my bonsais. He was teasing me, pretending he's killing my plants, when the intercom called. It was my sister, so he buzzed her up. I told him to leave me on call to see what she's up to. She had a very short dress and heels. She came on to him, so I started recording. He told her no multiple times that she asked him why he chose a loser instead of her. She then tried to kiss him multiple times, telling him to at least try before saying no. He pushed her away eventually, and she stumbled and fell over our glass coffee table. She started screaming, and my boyfriend panicked and called the ambulance. I was terrified. She had injured her thigh and needed stitches all the way up to her waist. My sister pressed charges and claimed that fiancé tried to violate her, unaware that I have recorded the whole interaction. When the truth came out, my fiancé pressed charges for assault and defamation. She didn't get any jail time but had to pay him a hefty sum, something my parents thought was unfair since he didn't need the money. This ruined my sister and her reputation, so she moved to another city and cut all contacts with everyone, including my parents who took her side all the way. My parents blamed me for ruining her life and bright future, and my mom always lamented her and accused me of taking a stranger's side, purely to take revenge on my sister for being more popular and successful than me. I went low contact after this, almost no contact. My relationship with my fiancé didn't change, but it was strained with my soon-to-be in-laws who thought I have brought drama to them, and that their son was on the verge of losing everything because of me. We have a much better relationship now. It took time for them to trust me again. I'm very close with my soon-to-be mother-in-law and sister-in-law, and father-in-law treats me like I was his daughter. In fact, they're paying for the whole wedding. I never told my parents about me getting engaged or about the wedding. My aunt and 2 cousins are the only ones who are invited from my side of the family. We're having a weekend wedding in Tuscany. My parents are now so indignant that they aren't invited. My mom has been trying to call and text me, but I deleted before even reading. I don't know what to tell her, really. It feels like hate, the thing in my chest, but it can't be possible to hate your own parents. Today my aunt said that my mom is slandering me all over Facebook. It has threatened my aunt by boycotting if she attended. I don't know if I should continue ignoring them or confront them. This is not easy. I don't want it to escalate. Now for the top advice. It is not hateful to remove horrible people from your life, even if they are your primary family. Get a new phone number and or block them. I changed my number about 2 years ago when I got engaged. I don't know who gave them my new number. Can you get a restraining order? I imagine your fiancé has good cause. Try to think of it this way. Pretend you are 5 years in the future. Will you regret not having your mother, father, and possibly sister at the wedding? There's no way it will go over well. I won't regret it. Not in 20 years. Unfortunately, restraining orders aren't a thing in my country, not even for husbands who mistreat their wives. Be supportive of your aunt and cousin no matter what their decision, but your parents' intentions for going to your wedding aren't good. They're not to celebrate or support you. The fact that they slander you shows their priority isn't to build bridges with you. You have mended your relationship with your in-laws. Focus on those healthy relationships for your wedding. If you feel the need to message your parent/mother, don't invite them to the wedding. Tell them you're prepared to hear what they're reaching out now, and that you hope they're willing to make their behavior up to you so you can both move forward with improving your relationship for the future. You have nothing to apologize for. They do, especially your mother and sister. Congratulations, and do not let them near your wedding or tear you down. Yes, that's what I told my aunt. That she didn't need to attend if she didn't want to. But my cousins are already decided. I really don't want them in my wedding. I just don't know if I should confront them and tell them to stop or continue ghosting them. Both can lead to drama. Honestly, ghost them. I'm a bit of a petty soul, so I would definitely play up with getting on with your in-laws at all the wedding prepping on social media, because that's going to absolutely get to them. Forgive me for saying, but your mother and sisters seem very obsessed with how they look to others. And seeing you have a great time and being affected by their drama would be the biggest middle finger you could give them. If you're posting on social media about having the support of in-laws and friends to make up for not having support from them, and then they're bad-mouthing you, you won't need to tell them to be quiet, because anything they say will just make them look bad. Trust me, I'm not unaffected. I'm terrified of what could happen, and if it escalates to something like what happened 3 years ago. I'm trying to minimize the problem as much as I can. They mean so little to me to care to take revenge. I just want my anxiety to go away. It seems mighty likely you need to cut ties with anyone that supports your sister, including your parents. Sorry, at least your guy's family likes you. I haven't seen them in over 2 years and we live in the same city. Now for the last story. I have had enough of my stepdaughter, so I moved back to my parents with my son. I'm also 8 weeks pregnant and I don't know what to do. I don't know if this is even ethical because it's about a minor. I will keep it anonymous and hope for the best. I'm at the end of my tether here and I feel paralyzed and in desperate need of advice. I, female 38, met my husband, male 44, about 4 years ago. I'm 8 weeks pregnant. Only husband did I know. I have a son, male 8, with my boyfriend who passed away in a car accident before my son was born. My husband has a daughter, female 13, from a previous marriage. Stepdaughter lives with us every other week. When we got married, ex-wife tried everything to get full custody of stepdaughter and failed. But it was made very clear to me, by stepdaughter, ex-wife, and husband, that I am not her mother and I am not allowed to participate in raising her. Stepdaughter basically ignored me and my son in our weeks. It wasn't perfect, but it wasn't hurting anyone directly. My son learned very early not to cross stepdaughter and kept to himself when she was around. I suspect ex-wife behind stepdaughter's coldness towards me and thought this must be hard for stepdaughter with all these changes. I tried to befriend her over the years, but she wasn't having it. It got worse when ex-wife remarried and got pregnant with twins 2 years ago. She started ignoring stepdaughter, trying to get my husband to have her more. We happily obliged, and basically stopped being a mother to her. It didn't help either that the new husband didn't like stepdaughter and wasn't shy about not wanting to raise another man's daughter. I asked my husband if we could take stepdaughter full-time and try to raise her, because I saw that her mental health was deteriorating and that she needed stability. The ex-wife blatantly refused the suggestion, so we continued with the every other week. The twins were born about a year ago and all went downhill from there. It seemed like the worse stepdaughter had it at her mom's, the more she hated me and my son. She would throw fits a couple of times every time she's with us. Break our stuff. Call me a witch if I try to tell her off. It's her house because her father bought it and we're just guests. She would yell at my son, and she even hit him a couple of times, telling him to keep to his room if he didn't like her treatment of him. When I told her not to put her hand on my son, she told me, "What are you going to do about it?" My son grew fearful of her and would ask me to take him to Grandpa, boyfriend's father, when she's living with us. I talked to my husband about it. I told him stepdaughter needed professional help because she's not feeling well and she's making us miserable when she's around. So she started to go to therapy, 6 months now. Other than that, my husband didn't know what to do either. If he tried to talk to her about being nice to us, she played innocent and told him she was playing around and hugged and kissed my son in front of him. And if he tried to be stern, she threw a tantrum and accused him of loving my son more than her. 3 months ago, my son's grandpa passed away. This hit my son and me very hard. My son was inconsolable for many weeks and couldn't really understand what it meant that he couldn't see Grandpa again. Grandpa was a carpenter, so his boyfriend. So since very young age, my son loved hanging with him at the garage working. Many times when he's there, he came home with something they made together. Butter knives, boxes, chessboards. And for my 38th birthday last summer, I got a stool that my son designed himself and built with his grandpa and then painted. This was the last project they had together since Grandpa passed away a few weeks later, so the stool was priceless to us. We had it in the kitchen. Stepdaughter made a lot of negative remarks about the stool, how ugly and poorly made it was. She laughed at my son's poor taste, and he was very distraught. This was the first time, however, that my husband got very angry at her and asked her to go to her room. She was so scared of his reaction that she went without any protest. This Christmas, stepdaughter was supposed to be with her mother. On Christmas Eve, her mother dropped her off at our house very early in the morning. Her new husband had decided he didn't want her to go with them to his parents' house, where they usually spend Christmas. Stepdaughter was on the verge of tears, standing there listening to her mother making excuses to my husband and me. My husband hugged stepdaughter the whole time, and I tried to fight away my tears. After her mom left, she went upstairs to her room to sleep. I also went to sleep since we don't usually wake up this early in holidays. My husband went to the gym and later he was going to the train station to bring my parents who were going to celebrate Christmas with us. Around 10 a.m., I heard my son screaming and crying downstairs. I ran down in horror. Stepdaughter had decided to break the stool my son had built with his grandpa, and she was trying to shove it in the fireplace. When she saw me, she smirked and said she didn't want ugly furniture in her house. I pulled her away and told her to go to her room and try to get the pieces of wood out of the fireplace. That was when she threw a scalding hot liquid in my face. It was a hot cocoa. I yelled in pain and my son started panicking, so I ran to him to tell him that I was fine. Stepdaughter stood there laughing. I took my son upstairs and went back to her. I grabbed her hard in her arm and started pulling, pushing, and dragging her up to her room and locked the door. Husband came home with my parents moments later. My mom took me to the emergency room, and my son insisted on coming with me. I had second-degree burn on my cheek and neck. When I went home, my husband was so mad at me for attacking stepdaughter by using force to get her to her room. He told me I should have had compassion knowing how hurt she was by her mother's abandonment. I told him that I had enough of this. I'm living a nightmare half of the time, having to walk in eggshells in my own home whenever she's around. My son is a prisoner in his own room when she's living with us, too terrified to cross a boundary of hers. I told him that I don't know how to handle this, and that it was a mistake from the beginning that I wasn't allowed to be a parental figure in her life with authority. He disagreed and told me that she has a kind heart and needed patience. But the thing is, I don't think she does. She targeted my son's handiwork, fully aware of its sentimental value. In my face, because she always hated the fact that my husband thinks I'm beautiful, it is opened with complimenting my eyes and smile. I didn't stay there for Christmas. I took my son and parents and went to my parents' home where I live now. My husband is in panic mode. He's been texting and calling me all the time, trying to get me to move back and work things out. Stepdaughter even texted apologizing. He probably made her. But I don't know what to do. I love him so much, but I'm ashamed to say that I hate that girl. My son starts hyperventilating of the thought of living with her again. And what about my unborn baby? I feel sick of the thought of having 50-50 custody of being at the mercy of his half-sister when it's my husband's week. This thought makes me want to have a termination. Please tell me if there's another solution to this hell I'm living. Now for the advice. Stepdaughter is a hot mess, and your husband is in serious denial. Even seeing you with an injury sustained at the hand of his daughter, he still defended her. Now that he's finally seeing consequences of his inactions, he says there will be change. Nope. His daughter needs a lot of help, and obviously the therapy is not enough. Your son probably needs therapy, because after years of dealing with his stepsister, he is heavily traumatized if not suffering from PTSD. Your new baby is in grave danger if it ever goes near its half-sister. Makes you wonder about the twins. Stay with your parents where it is safe. Your husband has to prove it is safe in his house, and an apology is nowhere near enough from your stepdaughter. Oddly enough, she loves her twin brothers and her stepdad very much. I've seen her with them in her last birthday. She was like a whole nother stepdaughter around them. You have second-degree burns, and he says she has a kind heart and you attacked her? You got attacked by her. You didn't even touch her other than getting her away from the fire until she did that to you. There was no telling what she might do next, so you had to manhandle her into her room for you and your son's safety. She saw how she injured you, and did not relent and voluntarily go to her room. Honestly, make him an ex-husband. Press charges. Nothing will happen to her because of her age, but you need a paper trail ASAP in case you decide to keep the pregnancy so you can pursue full custody. This is not even about co-parenting. She was hurting your son out of jealousy for a long time. She already feels replaced by her mother with the twins. There is no telling what she will do if her dad has another kid. She put you in the hospital and it tells you off for how you handle the situation? There's no solution other than divorce. Everything else would be unfair to your son. If you still want the baby, remember that not every parent gets 50-50. You could insist on supervised visits only, or that he will only have the child on alternating days with his other kid. However, remember in 5 years she will be of age and can go wherever she pleases. She could even move in with him, and there would be little you could do to stop it. Restraining orders are difficult to enforce and usually time-limited. Maybe he would be open to sign away his rights for a favorable split of assets in the divorce, but that wouldn't guarantee he will never change his mind and drag you into a lengthy custody battle. Really weigh all your options. It is heartbreaking. But are you sure you want to be tied to this man for the next 18 years? His daughter didn't get this all from her mother. Just be sure you will not come to regret it and take it out on your kid. It is hateful to be constantly reminded how they are causing their parents stress by existing or resembling the ex. I would not raise a baby with this man. He will choose his daughter, no matter how awful she is. It was a huge mistake not letting you discipline her because she has been shown that you aren't an authority figure. She physically attacked you. It is so to your son so often that he lives in fear. Don't put yourself and your son through this hell. I can't tell you whether or not you should get a procedure, but I would personally choose your mental and physical health over anything. It's unfortunate, but sometimes love isn't enough. That's exactly how I feel. If I stay with him, it's hell. If I separate and keep the baby, he will have 50% custody, and then I will live in fear. I'm not sure where you live, but if you document the physical attack, you may be able to get a restraining order so she can't be around when he has the baby, or limit the supervised visits. But it is still very early in the pregnancy. I would have a long discussion with your husband. Tell him it's gotten so bad you are considering a procedure. I hope you live in a country where you don't need his permission for that. The only solid solution for reconciliation I see is if he completely gives up custody of her. It won't help the hell beast's mental health, but it's the only way I can see you living a peaceful life with this man. He can't. Her mother and her new husband would probably throw her out. I couldn't bear it. Am I the a-hole for refusing to help my parents with their mortgage, forcing them to lose their home, even though I can easily pay it off? I'm 23 female, my parents are 45 female and 46 male. I have two brothers, 24 and 21, and a little sister 8. We grew up upper middle class. As children, my parents would buy my two brothers whatever they requested, regardless of how expensive it was, allowed them to go on trips with them and threw them over-the-top birthday parties which I didn't receive any. For example, my brothers got to go to Disney for their birthdays while I stayed with my grandparents. Fortunately, my aunt/grandma took me to Disney a few months later. After being called out, they said they couldn't afford a trip for 5. As we got a little older, my parents had us working in their business after school and weekends. They gave both my brothers allowances for helping out while I didn't receive anything, though I was expected to do more. I wish it was just financial abuse though. My parents always said very hurtful things. They'd also make horrible comments when I entered the room, and I honestly still don't know what I did wrong. When my older brother graduated high school, they gave him an all-inclusive trip around Europe for the summer. When I graduated the next year, I didn't even get a party from them. I think the worst of it being they paid for both my brother's higher education, but told me to figure it out because they can't afford to pay for 3 college degrees. At 18, I moved in with my grandparents full-time and decided not to go to college because I didn't want to get into debt or put that burden on my grandparents, who offered to pay for some. I did, however, take them up on their offer to financially support me until I had a job. My grandma gifted me about $5,000 after moving in with her to help me start an online business I told her about. Long story short, my online shop blew up and made well over 6 figures my first year. Within 5 years, 2 online shops and a lot of investing in real estate and stocks, I now make way more money than my parents ever made combined. During the pandemic, my parents had to shut down their restaurant and are still struggling to make ends meet. They are also unable to pay for their mortgage and are afraid they'll go homeless if I don't support them. They also have a lot of medical bills after my father got into an accident and needed surgery for his knee. I, being so grateful for everything my grandparents and aunts have done for me, decided to get my grandparents their dream home and paid off my aunt's debts for medical school. After realizing I can also easily afford to pay off their debts/mortgage, my parents have been begging me, literally in tears, to save their home, but I refused. They told me I'm an a-hole and said I deserved my upbringing but that I shouldn't be punishing my siblings and forcing them out their homes for the actions of my parents. I'm not punishing my siblings though. I'll be more than happy to support them, especially my baby sister if she comes and stays with me or my grandparents. Am I the a-hole for watching them become homeless? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. As soon as you refused, the mask slipped. They told you that you deserved their mistreatment. It's very telling that they are aware they mistreated her. They acknowledged they were terrible parents to her by saying that. And yet, they still expect her to financially support them. They have some nerve. She owes them nothing and I'd be sure to tell them so. Not the a-hole. You reap what you sow. Where are the 2 brothers they gave so much to help them out? My younger brother, 21, is still in school and my older brother has a great tech job but has a family of his own and isn't able to support them much. Not the a-hole. But what do your grandparents think? Does it pain them to see their children like this? However, forgetting your parents for a minute, your siblings may resent you for life, even your baby sister, for breaking up the family. You say baby sister can come stay with you away from her parents? I'd think long and hard about this. Maybe there is something you could do that meets in the middle, like a deferred loan in writing or something, just enough to not lose the house. This way it's just a small favor. My maternal grandparents, the ones who took care of me growing up, are on my side and don't think it's right for my parents to ask me for anything. They obviously feel bad for their daughter's situation, but don't think it's my responsibility, especially when they've called her out multiple times and she didn't change. Also, they aren't really a fan of my father. As for my siblings, they're fully aware of my treatment and wish they did something growing up but couldn't. They don't blame me for not wanting to help. We have a great relationship and I plan to support my younger siblings, 21 and 8. My little sister doesn't know anything about this and hopefully is kept that way until she gets older. Next story. Am I the a-hole for refusing to help my sister throw a party and pay for a gift for our parents' 30th wedding anniversary? My sister, 29 female, is our parents' favorite. They have tried to hide it over the years, but for almost all of my 26 female life, it has been made perfectly clear that my parents care more about my sister. They know her favorite food, favorite color, favorite band, and generally things you're supposed to know about the people you are very close to / family. But they have always tended to forget mine and just give me my sister's favorite things. Other family members have pointed it out to them. My grandpa, who was the best to me growing up, called them out in front of everyone on more than one occasion for it. Like when I was 8, they had a birthday dinner with my sister's favorite dinner instead of mine. Grandpa was like, "What the heck is this? Why did you make sister's favorite instead of Opie's?" My parents were all flustered and said it was just a silly mix-up. I'd say of the 16 birthday dinners I had with them, 15 of them were my sister's favorites and not mine. While the 16th one was only right because Grandpa forced his way into the kitchen to help that year. I was always a gamer and a reader. My sister loved makeup and dolls. So my birthday / Christmas gifts were often makeup and dolls. When people used to ask them what I wanted to be, they'd say what my sister wanted to be. I have brought up to them on multiple occasions that it hurts my feelings, but they never change. So I started to become more distant from my parents and don't make the effort I used to. My sister has acknowledged that she's aware of this stuff, but she still wanted me to help her throw a party for their anniversary and to go half with her on this really expensive gift she wants to get them. She told me about it over Christmas. The anniversary is in April. She wanted to go all out, but I told her I'm not doing anything that big to celebrate them and will not be putting all that effort in when they never make it with me. She told me that this would be helping her too. I told her she wants me to help her celebrate the people who show clear favoritism between their kids, but she doesn't see the big deal. We argued. She told me I was being childish and that I'm unfair to her / them. She told me if I don't help with the party and a gift, I am publicly shaming our parents and leaving it all on her shoulders. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. Give them makeup and dolls. No, get them Grandpa's favorite. Opie, not the a-hole. Just forget about them and live your best life. Celebrate your grandpa though. He's the real one. Not the a-hole. Favoritism or not, you don't have an obligation to pay expensive gifts to your parents nor to throw big parties. It is nice if you can afford it and if you have a good relationship with them, but not given. Your sister calling you unfair when it was your parents showing clear favoritism is laughable. Did your sister ever stand up for you? Not that it was her role, but it would have been nice. Her behavior in this situation is really selfish. It's about what she wants and what your parents want, disregarding what you want once again. She didn't. Other family members did, but she'd say nice things to me after it happened. That was about it. So it's not really standing up. More like a pat in the back, but she didn't do anything to make an unfair situation right. Definitely not a-hole, OP. Blaming the person who suffered from discrimination is not okay. What your parents did was not okay, and what your sister said to you is not okay. None of their bad behavior is your fault. Not the a-hole, and I'm surprised you're still keeping in touch with them. You aren't obliged to give your parents anything just because they made you. I hope you are surrounded by better people now. I have considered not being in contact with them anymore. Never took that step, but it has totally crossed my mind. I went low contact with my toxic family, and I couldn't be happier with my life. If you think it's something that will make you feel better and safer, then give it some more thought. Good luck. Next story. Am I the a-hole for not paying for the repairs for a car I gave to my nephew for free after buying myself a new one? Back in October, I decided to buy myself a new car, which is a used 2020 Jeep Compass. First vehicle I've gotten myself in over a decade. My nephew began college over the summer but had no car for transportation, and I was only going to get between $500 to $1,000 for it for trade-in or sale anyways. So, I decided to be a cool uncle and give it to him for free as his first vehicle. It was a 2008 Dodge and in pretty good shape. Drove well but had some problems such as oil pan leaking and some other minor work. So I brought it up with my nephew's father, that I wanted to give my nephew my old car as a gift for free. I wasn't asking any money from them, but made it clear that they would have to pay for anything pertaining to the transfer to them and update the inspection or anything else that needed to be done. I also let them know of any problems with it that I knew of. When asked why I was getting a new car, I told them I had thought it was time, and I had a job and budget to get one. I had been thinking about it for a few years and finally decided I should just do it. They agreed and they took it to a mechanic they trusted and had to do about $540 worth of work on it, for brakes, inspection, oil pan, and some other minor work. He said not to worry about a bill, that he'd work it up later. My nephew was excited when we gave it to him when he was visiting on the weekend, so now he doesn't have to bum rides or take a bus. Well, a couple months go by and the mechanic finally gets around to making out the repair bill. That, like I said, came out to be about $540. Well, my brother now wants me to pay the bill and says I should have paid for all the work before I even gave it to my nephew. My response was, I told you what condition I knew of about a car, and that any repairs or transfer payments would be their responsibility. Now they are acting like I've cheated them somehow, when all I can think is that I gave them a car at no additional cost other than repairs, and somehow I'm the a-hole? What do you guys think? Should I have paid or chipped in for the repairs or what? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. You told them what the deal was. They accepted it. Now they want to change the rules. If they mention it again, politely tell them that if the repairs are too much, you'll gladly take the vehicle back. But those are the options. Either shut up and pay the bill or give it back. No good deeds goes unpunished. OP, tell them you want the car back. Then you'll sell it and make money off of it, since you don't want to burden them with a free car. Not the a-hole. I did something similar with a friend's son. I asked him for $1,000 for the car that he could pay over 10 months. He paid me $300 over 3 months. Complained about the work it needed, which I told him about, and his dad also looked at it with him. Tuned it out like teenage boys who think they're real mechanics do. And it broke down beyond repairs 6 months into him owning it. He never paid me the other $700. His mom wouldn't hold him accountable. So I took the L and made a mental note that we'll just never do him a favor again. When I was younger, my father was going to buy a new car and trade in the old one. My neighbor heard about it and asked my dad if he could buy it. My dad reluctantly agreed because he believed mixing money and friendship was dangerous. Sure enough, after a month or so, the car died. My neighbor informed my dad about it and made him feel bad, so my dad paid him back all of the money. A few years later, my parents wanted to sell the house and move away. They told a real estate agent not to put up signs but to sell it quietly. When our neighbors discovered they had sold the house, they were upset because my parents hadn't told them, because they wanted to buy it for their son. My father was wise in his decision not to involve family and friends in money transactions. I've learned a valuable lesson. Last story. Am I the a-hole for not asking my ex when I am moving abroad? Me and my ex-wife divorced when our daughter was 3 and she's 15 now. I'm gonna be fair. Ex has a lot of issues, to the level that every member of her family, her mom, dad, siblings, cousins, uncles, aunts, etc., gave testimonies against her at the case custody. As a result, I was given sole legal and medical custody after the divorce. She was bound to child support. That was automatically cut from her salary that was also decided by the judge because she was found untrustworthy to handle this. The house we lived in was her father's, and he made her move out to a smaller flat of his and he transferred the deed to mine in my daughter's name. She's also not allowed to have anything but supervised visits, but she didn't visit since she is 5 years old, so I mostly raised her by myself, with the help of our extended families. 2 months ago, I got a job offer from a university in Uruguay to be a visiting professor for 3 years. After I talked with my daughter, we thought it was a good idea, and she said she wanted to see and experience South America. There, I also don't have a rigid schedule so we can tour around South America in these 3 years. I also never went to South America other than Rio in late 1990s for Rio Carnival, so it will be a new experience for me too. And at the 27th of December, we moved to Uruguay. Her family was supportive and told us to enjoy this experience. But the problem is my ex. She called me and yelled at me for 30 minutes. Then my daughter took the phone from me and closed it to her face after saying, "Why do you care when you weren't there?" The thing is, my ex doesn't have any power over me and my daughter, so we can do anything we want. She also doesn't own the house she's living right now, and father-in-law can kick her out if he thinks she is out of line. So I might be abusing the power I have. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. To your point, she hasn't cared for the past 10 years. So I think it's just the jealousy coming out in her. As long as you're legally able to move your daughter out of the country, go for it. Enjoy your life and don't look back. This indeed. Opie, don't even bother to let her father kick her out. Put your energy elsewhere. Just ignore her calls and go have fun with your daughter. If her father is annoyed with her, he can handle her himself. And I hope your daughter will have a blast. Not the a-hole for me, I reckon. I'm a little confused as to what the problem is that you describe at the end. It looks like you and your child are perfectly fine to move away to Uruguay. The anger that your ex-partner has seems likely to be driven by their own shame, rather than anything based on the situation. If they had a good relationship with their child and exercised the visitation rights, then it would surely be a difficult situation to manage. But that's clearly not the case here. I think their living situation shouldn't really be any concern when you and your child make this decision. It's really up to the father-in-law whether they boot them out. I think you don't have to feel guilty or responsible if their own actions cause them negative consequences. Father-in-law can kick her out if he ever thinks her daughter is disturbing her granddaughter. There are details that I couldn't write here, but if my ex goes to their parents' house, one of her sisters does a complete body search on her, in case she is hiding something dangerous or could be used as a weapon. Not the a-hole, but maybe cover your bases by talking with your lawyer. I am legally safe. I was even offered to terminate her parenting rights during the divorce process, but I didn't want it. I was still holding out hope for her, but maybe I should have done that. Am I the a-hole for wanting to move away and not looking after my parents? I, 27 female, have 2 older siblings, 41 female and 39 male, who have taken advantage of my parents' kindness for years. My parents have tried to help set my siblings up because they were high school dropouts and didn't know what they wanted to do in life. They opened up restaurants and bailed them out of debt, only to get into bigger crap later on. My sister has finally grown up and has a good business now, but she spends too much. She even tried to borrow $50,000, but I knew she won't pay me back, so I said no. She then tried to make me feel bad by saying I was a horrible sister. My brother is still an idiot and has racked up $500,000 of debt, and sends his letters to my parents' house thinking they'd bail him out again. Sadly, my parents are in no condition to work anymore due to injuries. I didn't dare ask for financial help from my parents because they were severely stressed for my siblings, so I went on benefits when I went to university. Every time I saved up a few thousand, a debt collector would come knocking because my brother was severely late on payments. So every time the debt collectors came, I paid what I had saved over and over again while I was studying because I felt sorry for my parents. When I graduated, I had to move for work and came up with an agreement with my parents where I paid in advance for their mortgage and they pay me back in lump sum, almost $30,000, when I came back. 18 months later, I came back and they did not keep their end of the agreement. They tried to justify their actions by saying that they were leaving their life insurance and house, with a large mortgage, to me when they die. I was depressed for a long time because that money was to help with living expenses when I go back to study. Fast forward now, my parents told me they will be canceling their life insurance as they can no longer afford it. I said that's fine, but then asked them, which one of your 3 kids has cost you the most grief financially? To which my mom answered, your brother. So I said to get him to look after you, and that it's their fault for investing in the wrong child. Now they are mad at me, saying that it was a waste raising me because I'm not a dutiful daughter. To which I retaliated by saying that they stole the money that was meant for studying from me. My mom tried to downplay this and said it's in the past and that I should let it go. I'm planning to move away, even to a different country, and to go low contact. Despite this, I'm even willing to send a small amount of money to them once in a while, which they probably won't even appreciate because they are not grand gestures like my sisters. So am I the a-hole? Edit 1. From the $30,000 incident, I stopped financially helping my family, which was about 7 years ago. As for the debt collector's part, it happened when I was a naive and very sheltered teenager. My brother pressured my mom to take some of the loans out in her name. I helped out because my parents are both depressed, and my mom wanted to end herself. Also because I was scared that it could escalate to us losing our home. Edit 2. I am financially and mentally okay. I just wanted to know if I am the a-hole for moving out and not wanting to look after my parents in their old age, which will be end of this year when I buy a house. Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. Oh gosh. First of all, stop paying for your brother's debt. That can get you into more trouble. And second, go no contact or low contact with your family because they are no good for you. Sorry, I forgot to mention, but I stopped about 7 years ago. And I will go low contact when I moved out end of this year when I buy a house. Your family doesn't seem to care a lot about you. Protect yourself and don't put yourself on fire to keep them warm. I know, I feel they only care if I give them very expensive stuff. I bought my mom an Arden handbag for her birthday, but she didn't even use it once, but will use the Louis Vuitton handbag my sister got her, even though it's fugly. I took back the Orton handbag and will be using it for myself because it actually looks sexy. Not today, Hall. Stop paying them money? Stop entirely. That's a horrible idea. They're using you and they will continue to use you just like your brother has. Sorry, I forgot to mention I stopped financially helping about 7 years ago. But you said you may continue to send them some money after you move. Don't do that. Please don't do that. After reading all these supportive comments, I've decided not to. If they are starving, I'll just get food delivered to them, I guess. Maybe. Next story. Am I the a-hole for not taking sister-in-law's kids on vacation with us? My husband's sister has 2 kids, 10 and 12. We don't see them often because they live a few states away and their father has primary custody. My sister-in-law has a habit of imposing on us. She'll call us while she's driving to our house and tell us she'll be staying a week or 2. So it wasn't a huge surprise when she called my husband a couple days ago to say she was sending the kids to our house for 3 weeks, once school lets out. Apparently there's some drama at their dad's house, so he doesn't want them exposed to it, but she rents a room so the kids can't stay the night more than 1 to 2 nights a week. The only problem is that one of the weeks she plans on sending them to us will be on vacation at Universal. She said, great. They've never been. They'll have so much fun. My husband explained that isn't an invitation. He's letting her know she needs to choose different weeks. She asked why the kids can't just go with us, and we explained we're driving, so there's no room, and our Airbnb has just enough beds for our family. She offered to drive them down herself and have them sleep on the couch. We said that could work, and told her the cost of the tickets we bought were $380 each, so if she sends us the money, we would buy another 2. She asked why she would send us the money, and we explained these are her kids. She would need to pay for them to go. She said that was ridiculous. If we have the money for this trip, then we're obviously well off and can afford to pay for her kids too. We told her we saved for years for this trip. We have a strict budget and we cannot afford an extra $800. As it is, we'd have to figure out how to add more to our budget for extra food, which we didn't ask her to pay for. She called us selfish and said we'd get to explain to our kids why they didn't get to go to Universal and their cousins did. My husband hung up on her and shortly after got a call from his brother saying pretty much the same. He said $800 won't break us, but their sister would never be able to save that much. He's not entirely wrong. We could put it on a credit card. But the whole reason it took so long to take this trip is because we are paying exclusively in cash. We just got out of credit card debts a couple years ago and don't want to go backwards for something that isn't an emergency. We've given both his siblings money before for things like rent and car repairs, but this is different. Are we the a-holes? Huge not the a-hole. She sounds so entitled. $800 is a lot of money to ask for on a whim. Seriously, that's my mortgage payment for the month. And his brother also needs to butt out of it, unless he's going to pony up that change. Don't you love the way Opie's sister-in-law and brother-in-law seem to think that Opie and her husband have an extra $800 in their back pockets? But the concept of saving for what you want is completely foreign to them. Leeches. Sometimes the posts on this sub astound me. Not the a-hole. You aren't obligated to take your sister-in-law's children on your family vacation, and you certainly aren't obligated to pay for it. Would it have been nice if everything worked out that way? Sure. Sounds like those kids have it rough. Does it in any way mean you should pay $800 and overburden your family? Of course not. Sister-in-law needs a talking to about boundaries and what your family can and cannot take on.
Blood ties aren't an excuse to take advantage of someone.
Not Dayhall. Just refuse to watch those kids at all.
It sucks their mom has no concept of notice, money, or how entitled she's being,
but don't enable her at all.
Flat out refuse.
Call the police if she drops kids off after you refuse to watch them.
If the kids are in an uncomfortable environment and we can keep them away from that for a few weeks,
we're 100% happy to do that. But we just need them to come a little later.
None of this is the kids' fault, so we don't want to punish them.
Next story is titled, Am I the a-hole for leaving my friend and his 2 kids in another state?
So my buddy's wife ran out on him and he was pretty distressed by it, saying he didn't know what to do. He wasn't sure how he was going to raise these kids by himself. I felt bad, so I told him I would move across the country to help him out and help raise the kids. My one stipulation was, if you start dating someone and move them in within the first month of me being there, I would leave the next day. He was buying a new house. I was just helping him raise his kids while he got on his feet, and then after a couple years, I was going to move out. Fast forward to us both moving in, and he's been talking to this girl on Tinder for about a month. The first day we move in, he brings her over. I had certain areas of the house I had made arrangements in, organized things the way I wanted, and when he introduced her to me, he said these are his areas, don't mess with anything here. As soon as I was out of earshot, she started telling him how she wanted to reorganize those areas. After about a week of her being there, I talked to him and asked, did you just decide to move her in here or does she have her own place to go to? And he said she was going back home that night. And she did. For one night. I was paying about half the cost of the house, but he kept pushing my stuff further and further into my room. Furniture that I had brought. Different ornaments. Until finally everything I owned was pretty much in this tiny room while his girlfriend brought all of her stuff over. I told him this isn't what I agreed on, and if she was going to be living here all the time, I was leaving because I don't feel like being a part of Full House. He told me I wasn't in a place financially to move out anyways, and I should just get with the program. Well, he was partially right. I didn't have the money to leave, but I did have the credit score to get a loan. When he and the girlfriend took the kids one weekend, I rented a U-Haul and moved all of my stuff out. By the time he came back, I was gone. He texted me saying how I screwed him and the kids over. How was he supposed to pay for everything without me there? I told him to figure it out with his girlfriend since she's the one that's helped him so much. Edit. The reason I told him if he moved someone in I would leave isn't because I thought he would. It's because my last roommate did the same thing and moved in their partner without telling me. I got a call while they were driving back from picking up the partner's things from a couple states over to ask if they could stay. It was something along the lines of, hey, we're on our way back from the States. I told my partner to come move in with us and we grabbed all their things. We're almost back. It's okay if they move in, right? And for those who worried about the kids, I made sure there were plenty of people around who could check up on them and keep them happy and healthy when I left. It was a couple months after his wife left him that he started talking to this girl. There was a situation where he was already leaving the job he was at. There was no reversing the situation. And he was moving back to his hometown to be closer to his parents. His wife was supposed to go with the kids first, but that wasn't happening obviously, so the kids stayed with his parents while he tied up loose ends. I told him I was leaving and he needed to get his stuff together, about a month before I actually left. I was going to tell him beforehand, but there were still a lot of things I had paid for that I wanted to take with me, and I knew they were things he and his girlfriend liked having around. I didn't want to deal with them ganging up on me and getting the police involved. From my last experience when the police are involved, if the person who is staying in the residence after you leave say that you're trying to steal something, it doesn't matter if your name is on the lease. It's now their home, and everything in it is theirs, unless you can prove in court that it's not. I had already lost out on a couple tens of thousands of dollars. I wasn't willing to lose that last little bit of what I had. He told me I wasn't in a place financially to move out anyways, and I should just get with the program. Not a a-hole for so many reasons, but this part just really seals the deal on him being a gaping a-hole. You moved states at great financial risk to help him, and he turned around and tried to financially abuse you for it. This exactly. Get with the program after violating literally your one rule? Get the hell out of here. Not a a-hole. I swear this sounds like Buddy's wife left him because he was straying. Mighty big coincidence that he moved. Found some random gal, got her all moved in before you could blink, and she took over the house. Good for you for moving out. As is pointed out in another comment, his friend went right to financial manipulation in order to bend Opie to their will. Decent chance that previous wife was in a similarly abusive situation but more vulnerable. Getting out of a horrible situation is hard. Getting out with children is harder. Priorities as a parent are not taken into account with a statement, I know. Not Dayhall. He wanted to have his cake and eat it. If you start dating someone and move them in within the first month of me being there, I would leave the next day. He moved a girlfriend in. You moved out. Sounds like the deal you made was crystal clear. And sounds like Opie knew he had a habit of straying. Why else make such an oddly specific ultimatum in advance? Usually, it's suggested that you wait 6 months before introducing a new person to your kids, much less move them in. Not Dayhall, by the way. Now for the last story. Am I the a-hole for threatening my mom that I'll stop paying the house utilities if she won't respect my sleeping pattern? So I got hired on a remote job that pays 3 times more than my job before the lockdown. The problem, however, is my working hours are 8 p.m. to 4 a.m. Because of this, I became a nocturnal person, which was never really a problem to me because my brain is more active at night. My mom, however, didn't like it. She made a rule that all of us should eat together at breakfast every Sunday, which means I have to wake up at 7 a.m. on weekend. I can't because I normally sleep around 4 or 5 a.m., and I can't force my body to sleep early. Not to mention I'm still working from Friday night up to Saturday morning. I've been telling my mom not to disturb me on Sunday, but she's always like, no, you sleep early on Saturday so you can join us. But I can't. And no, I'm not resorting to sleeping pills or whatever. So earlier, I got annoyed with her, which prompted me to threaten that I'll stop paying the house utilities if she won't respect my sleep schedule. Due to the pandemic, my parents' business went bad, so they're barely meeting the ends. So my financial assistance is a huge help for them. Mom got mad. Dad called me selfish and ungrateful for letting me live at their house rent-free. Funny, it's because it's not even free since I'm paying a lot for the utilities. Am I the a-hole? Now for the comments. Not the a-hole. Tell her that you'll be happy to have breakfast together as a family when you wake up at noon. You can call it brunch, or you can call it a compromise, whatever she prefers. Not the a-hole. They can be adults or they don't get their life subsidized by you anymore. Not the a-hole. If you can, move out and let them sort out the mess you leave behind. To be honest, I could. I just can't because of the COVID situation in my country. Probably once I got my vaccine. Start saving the money and doing the research, and getting everything ready. Not the a-hole, but come up with a compromise, like a family lunch or dinner instead of breakfast. I always eat lunch and dinner with them since lunch is technically my breakfast and dinner is my lunch. So what is the difference between that meal and every other meal? Control.